Вот тут ми тего ціло гад. Отсюда чикса.
Много ми се допадна. Нели до руки тебе ти се допадна. И на Дорог му се допадна. Дорогче? Детка Кирил. Жената што ни ги купила нишките играчки, да.
This is Corona Poker. It was game.
It's hard to watch our heroes crumble and fade away, and in mixed martial arts, it's far worse than other sports. Fighters aren't throwing a ball around and simply missing goals as they decline. They're being beaten mercilessly and knocked unconscious. Retirement in MMA is a far heavier proposition emotionally because of this, and today we're going to take a look at the 10 that tore at our heartstrings the most. Whether it was a bittersweet goodbye, lost potential, a brutal end, or some combination of all those things, these are the career endings that moved us the most. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point, and these are the 10 most emotional retirements in MMA history. Number 10, Ben Askren. When 18-0 Ben Askren entered the UFC, there was already talk about a fight with GSP, with Khabib, with the greatest in the sport. The level of expectation was high, to say the least. For years, Ben was the biggest unsigned talent outside the UFC. This would be his chance to finally get the recognition he felt he deserved. But it would all end in a year's time, with his legacy changed forever in ways I'm sure he never thought possible. After a controversial win in his debut against Robbie Lawler, Askren would end up on the wrong end of a highlight reel finish in his first ever loss that's likely to be replayed for decades. Jorge Masvidal's flying knee that KO'd Ben in just 5 seconds' time was absolutely devastating. When Askren was then submitted by Damian Maia in the third round of their fight, the tone about his entire career had shifted. There was nobody mentioning St. Pierre anymore as they had years prior, nobody talking about his place amongst the greatest. Everything had changed, and at this low point in his career, Askren was forced to step away.
I think it's fairly obvious what I'm going to say. I'm retired from the sport of mixed martial arts, and frankly, I'm retired from everything, and I need a hip replacement. So, man, that's it for me. I've been filled with gratitude for how great of a career I've been able to have, even though, obviously, in the end, it did not turn out to go my way.
His legacy altered irreversibly in just a year's time. He would get no more chances to prove himself. A bitter ending to a career spent on the outside looking in. Could a prime Askren have been the greatest welterweight in UFC history? Sadly, we'll never know. Number 9, Michael Bisping. There aren't too many stories in all of mixed martial arts that were more captivating than that of the late career of Michael Bisping. After spending years just below greatness, the Count put together a string of wins that landed him in the UFC Hall of Fame. First, he would topple former champion Anderson Silva in a classic, then he would shock the world and capture the middleweight title in an upset over Luke Rockhold, only to follow that up by avenging his most bitter loss in a victory over Dan Henderson. Bisping was certainly nearing his time to walk away from the sport, and it seemed like his next bout against George St. Pierre would be the perfect time. This massive event against one of the all-time greats. Michael would come up short, but the GSP fight was not the end. Instead, a brutal footnote to his career would take place just 3 weeks later. Stepping in for Anderson Silva to save UFC Shanghai, Bisping was knocked out cold by Kelvin Gastelum. Immediately afterwards, there was talk of one more fight, a goodbye in London, a proper send-off. But sadly, this was the end. The Gastelum fight had caused more vision problems for Michael, and the risk of total blindness was too much.
12 or 13 years in the UFC. You know, you can't do it forever. Done it for a long time, of course. You know, I've got issues with my eye. After the Gastelum fight, then I started having issues with my good eye. You know, so which I've never spoken about before.
He would be forced to end his career abruptly before he ever really got a chance to say goodbye. Number 8. Ian McCall. Mixed martial arts is hard on a fighter's body. Everything you do in training and during a fight can lead to injury, not to mention what your opponent can do to you. Ian McCall had the potential to be a star in the UFC. At flyweight, he had the personality, the charisma, and the talent, but after a botched fight in his debut and a series of losses to the division's top guys, McCall's career would take an unexpected and unprecedented turn for the worse. Following his January 2015 bout with John Lineker, McCall would have 6 scheduled bouts in a row canceled, spanning the next 2 years of his career due to injuries and issues on both sides of the bouts. With a litany of health concerns related to his brain and his GI tract, as well as the deep regret about his career's path he expressed to Ariel Helwani, McCall asked for his UFC release. Despite all of this, McCall decided to continue and signed with Rizin, only for his horrible luck to continue when the ring rope opened a cut that forced a doctor's stoppage in his debut. That next spring, McCall would headline Rizin 10 against Horiguchi and be KO'd in just 9 seconds. After all that, Ian had simply had enough, telling Ariel Helwani while announcing his retirement,
"I'm not in this to be anything but the best in the world. If I cannot compete at that level of the best in the world, then it's not worth it for me."
Number 7, Mirko Cro Cop. In a sport where fighters are made very human when dropped into unconsciousness or forced to submit, there are a few fighters who still feel like otherworldly entities, like some kind of sentient machine, and one such fighter was Mirko Cro Cop. After a legendary run in Pride and K1, Cro Cop's UFC debut was highly anticipated. Unfortunately, his time in the promotion was less than ideal, going 4-4, with an all-time highlight reel KO loss to Gabriel Gonzaga, arguably his most lasting legacy in that promotion. But following that, he would win the K1 World Grand Prix 2012, avenge that loss to Gonzaga in his final UFC fight, and go on an 8-fight winning streak that saw him capture the Rizin Openweight GP title and sign with Bellator, where he would avenge a loss to Roy Nelson in his debut. The mystique of Cro Cop's youth had morphed into an incredible story of a fighter in his mid-40s surging back, proving age is just a number. His toughness and longevity qualities anyone could admire, but life and fighting is unforgiving. A shocking end to his career would come swiftly when Cro Cop suffered a stroke and was forced to retire. Not only that, but his doctors told him any more blows to the head could result in paralysis. Mirko said in a final statement on Croatian television, "It's over. I hope I'm not going to cry, but it's the inevitable retirement. I will never enter the ring again." Number 6, Randy Couture. I've often said when asked about MMA retirements that Randy Couture's is my favorite, and most people just assume I don't like Couture or that I'm kind of an asshole. While the latter is true, I was a huge fan of Randy, as was nearly everyone, but there was something so bittersweet about his end. It just seemed the perfect finish to an MMA career. No, he didn't ride off into the sunset. He didn't go out on top. After a legendary 14-year career that saw him defy the odds and age time and time again, his final bout would end with a brutal head kick KO loss to Lyoto Machida at UFC 129. His last bouts prior to that were a win over the aging Mark Coleman and the James Toney fight, a fun spectacle, and I assume a decent payday for the natural. The Machida fight was different though. This wasn't some kind of cushy goodbye bout. Lyoto had just lost the light heavyweight title a year earlier. This was a test. Couture wanted to know if he still had it, if he could still compete with a top guy. And while the answer was bitterly no, it was an answer received by Couture with class and grace in his post-fight interview. Sure, he could have lingered and beat plenty of guys, but he wasn't the best anymore, and so he wanted to walk away. That kind of self-awareness is admirable, and it's why it's my favorite retirement.
Oh yeah, I'm relieved. Completely different circumstances. This was a decision that's been a long time coming now, and I'm kind of relieved it's over.
Number 5, Rashad Evans. The end does not oftentimes come quickly in mixed martial arts. Instead, it's a long and grueling process. Years of decline, not days or weeks. Rashad Evans was a massive star in his time, one of the biggest of the post-Tough One era. His title win over Forrest Griffin was massive. His non-title main event with Rampage Jackson did over 1 million buys. His rivalry with John Jones, one of the most intense in the sport. After an extended absence from injury starting in 2013, Rashad began his slow descent towards retirement by losing to Ryan Bader and Glover Teixeira back-to-back, which aren't the worst losses as both are elite talents. However, a year would pass and Evans would move down to middleweight, his physique giving fans hope. He was always undersized. This would be a new era for the former champion, but back-to-back split decision losses to Daniel Kelly and Sam Alvey proved otherwise. Things had changed. Another year would pass before Rashad would re-emerge at light heavyweight and be brutally KO'd in less than a minute by Anthony Smith. The writing was on the wall, but we all know how fighters hold on. There's always that worry about how they'll handle losing what defined them, if they'll have anything left. This story has a happy ending though. When he announced his retirement on ESPN, Rashad showed no bitterness towards his decline, no desire to cling to the sport.
Fighting was everything. You know, I put life second, but now life is taking over, and now fighting is become second.
Number 4, Brad Pickett. Mixed martial arts is truly unique in that you don't have to be the best fighter in the world to be a fan favorite. If you leave everything in the cage, that's more than enough to win the crowd. Brad Pickett was as blood and guts as a fighter can come. He never competed for a world title. He went 5-9 in the UFC, but he scored 7 of the night bonuses in his time with Zuffa, and by March 2017, he was a firm fan favorite, even though he'd lost 5 of his last 6. And after years of serving up incredible fights to the fans, he had planned the perfect ending to it all. One last fight in his hometown of London, a win and a proper send-off in front of his friends and family. Everything was going fantastically too. Pickett was just a minute away from a decision win against Marlon Vera on the scorecards, but the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. Vera nailed Pickett with a head kick that dropped him instantly. Brad, with tears in his eyes, gave an emotional post-fight interview before leaving his trilby hat in the center of the cage.
It just shows basically I made the right decision before going into this fight. I was winning the fight for 14 minutes and then I got a head kick where the younger me would have chewed that up and just carried on going, you know, but it's not the fairy tale ending that myself and probably everybody else had wanted.
Number 3, Chael Sonnen. A lot of times we look at Chael Sonnen as a character and not as a person. His pro wrestling style persona is so ingrained in who he is to the fans that he almost seems to be completely that character. Brash, unflinching, and unbreakable. The bad guy has never had a bad day.
No, I would never apologize to Anderson. In a million years I wouldn't apologize to that guy. I've held back. I've been nothing but a gentleman to Anderson Silva. I offered him a way out.
But Chael Sonnen is a person, and after losing to Lyoto Machida at Bellator 222, his heart was laid bare for all to see. Sonnen had no intention of retiring when he walked into the cage on June 14th, 2019. The plan was to get the win and call out 2-division champion Ryan Bader, but Machida brutalized Chael for the entire fight. And after a desperate first 5 minutes, Sonnen would meet his end via a flying knee 22 seconds into the next round. Post-fight in the cage, Chael had very little to say. He thanked everyone, he said goodbye. It was backstage with his friend Ariel Helwani while holding his children that Sonnen bared a bit more of his soul than usual, getting emotional discussing the promise he made to his dying father.
I promised my father I'd I was just in the sport.
Do you leave with any regrets?
No. I loved everyone.
And while he never did become a world champion, he certainly had a career that would make any father proud. Number 2, Mark Kerr. What is there to say about Mark Kerr that hasn't already been said? The man had possibly the most potential of any athlete in the sport's history, but his demons dragged him down in the prime of his life. All of this is well documented and will be even more common knowledge when The Rock's biopic about the fighter is released in the near future. And while that movie will likely just focus on the early 2000s, Kerr's story went on long after people stopped caring about it. Of course, everyone remembers how badly he looked when he knocked himself out at Pride 27, but he went on fighting for another 5 years, and in that time he would never see another significant win. He would work for promotions you've never heard of, and his career would meet its sad ending at the hands of an up-and-coming King Mo, who KO'd Kerr in 25 seconds at M1 Global Breakthrough. His name garnered a main event slot against the 4-0 Lal, but there were no illusions as to what this fight really was. The old and the weak are fed to the young in mixed martial arts. The show came and went, most fans likely never even knowing it occurred, but that is often the fate for fighters who fall from grace. Their careers continue on and end in a heap on the mat years after they've been long forgotten. A reminder for anyone who sees it of how brutal this sport can truly be.
30 years of knowledge in my head of stuff, how to train, how to get ready for events, techniques. So sometimes I feel, maybe not regret that I'm working here, just kind of, feel like that my talents are gone unused. I think that's a better way to describe it.
Number 1, Chuck Liddell. For a fighter like Chuck Liddell, there was no other end to his career but a violent one. Liddell lived and breathed fighting. He was never going to walk away at a sensible time. He was never going to call it a career before he absolutely had to do so. He would be forced away from the cage after suffering 3 knockout finishes in a row, starting with Rashad Evans and ending with Rich Franklin. For the fans, it was absolutely heartbreaking to see him decline in this way.
I don't want to be the guy labeled as the person that put him out of the sport or whatever. I don't like the thought of that. So.
And Dana White had seen enough too, as his longtime friend lay there in a daze after his 3rd KO loss in 3 years. He knew it was time to end it.
I guarantee you that tonight was the last night.
Can you really though guarantee it? Because you know how fighters are, they're persuasive.
I guarantee it, tonight was the last night.
And while Liddell accepted his fate and took the office job the UFC gave him,
But anyway, I love this sport, and I'm excited to get, go to my new stage of my life. So thank you, everybody, and love y'all.
Interviews throughout the years proved that Chuck still felt he could go.
Look, I still want to fight. I still like fighting. But my reasons for retiring stay the same, and there's nothing I can do about that. So I'm happy doing what I'm doing, promoting the sport, and helping to grow the sport I love. So.
Whether he was discussing theoretical fights with John Jones or teasing a comeback, the Iceman still saw himself as a fighter after years of it building up inside him. And having lost his UFC office position in 2018, he attempted a comeback like Frank Miller's old Batman in The Dark Knight Returns. But this wasn't a comic book. Tito Ortiz destroyed Liddell in one of the saddest moments in MMA history. Chuck would retire for a second time after the bout. Huge shout out to the pride of the West Midlands, Tom Moore, for putting his editing sorcery to work on this video. Follow him on Twitter at TomMJMoore. Thanks for watching. Please give us a like and subscribe. We've got 3 new videos or more for you every single week. Let us know what you thought of the video in the comments below. Follow On Point MMA on Twitter, and have yourself a wonderful day.
No, that for this round. And hope I win. Mistake. Yeah. POKER. Okay, that's it. Goodbye.